And without further ado, although that was quite a lot of ado, but without further ado, here is Lee Dixon. Hello, Lee.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Obviously, I have to thank you, not just for coming on again, but for this timing specifically, because it will bring a lot of people to the podcast. It will call a lot of attention to the podcast, which is our chance to remind people about the fundraiser. I know that philanthropy in general and giving back is important to you, and the Arsenal Foundation, as an Arsenal man yourself, is very important to you. So I really appreciate the timing of coming on now.
Well, absolutely. I think, I'll come on and talk to you anytime. You know that, mate.
Thank you.
But the timing is perfect. And the more that we can raise awareness for anything that the foundation are doing throughout the year, the better. So we as ex-players have our part to play, as well as the present players, to go on and win the league. That'll bring attention to everything. We want that to happen. But, being a former player, we certainly don't take our responsibilities lightly, and we want to get involved. And certainly the Zatari project is something that's an amazing thing that the club are doing. And the more money we raise, obviously, the better for the kids.
Yeah, well said. So you mentioned that a title might bring more attention. I'm sure everybody listening has said, yes, that's why we want a title. Any reason is a good reason. And it's funny, before we started recording, I said one of the things we could talk about today is the pressure of the run-in. Mm-hmm. You chose the word panic, so I will use your words. You've been in title run-ins, and at this phase of it, as a supporter, I feel quite a bit panicked. Yeah. I'm sure some of that is due to the fact that it is 10 years ago since we were in one. And I think one thing that's really changed, Lee, is at that time, it was almost expected we would be in one. This has come so unexpectedly, which makes the desire for it, combined with the length of time since it's happened, so deeply ingrained in us.
Yeah.
When you were at this stage of the season, how did you cope with the pressure, stroke, panic, personally and as a group, collectively?
Well, it's interesting. It's there, as you quite rightly pointed out, it's been a while since we've been anywhere near this position. And as you said, it probably has crept up on a few people. I certainly don't think it's crept up on Mikel and his players. I'm pretty sure that, behind the walls, they'll have been talking about the progression that the team's been making, the size of the squad, the improvement in the quality of the players that have come over the last few windows. All that is part of this so-called process that Mikel talks about, and was kind of, you're going on about the process all the time, but we're now seeing the fruits of that, and the progression of the team has been outstanding this season. And he will turn around to you and say, yeah, I told you it was coming. It's just a matter of time. And we've all been hopeful that we could get to a point where we could challenge, because that's ultimately, as a player, that's all you want, especially playing. There's levels of achievement as a player. You start off your career, you try and get in the first team, you get in the first team, you try and win as many games, you see if you can, and certainly for me, playing in the lower leagues, I built myself up until getting to a place in the Arsenal first team. And then my goal was, could I stay in the first team for the next game? And my goal then pretty much stays the same. I always thought I ended up playing 619 of them, but I ended up starting off going, could I make 2? Could I make 3? And I know it sounds, well, that's quite short-sighted. It wasn't. It was a kind of, that's the one thing that kept me going. And it's the old cliche of one game at a time. But I think certainly when you get in a position of pressure, which they're certainly right in at the moment, and it's going to get, I say worse. Worse isn't I don't say worse because that sounds like a bad thing, and it's not. The pressure is a good thing because it means you are in a situation. It's quite easy to, and I call it flip-flop football, and obviously flip-flops being the beach wear that you probably got a different name for. But
no, that's what I use.
Is that what you're right? Okay.
Although I think the kids now wear the slides, right?
Slides, yeah. Slides football doesn't sound the same, but flip-flop football, a lot of teams end up playing at the end of the season when you're just seeing out a kind of nothing season. You might have attained a certain level of competence within the group you're in, but our next phase is to be challenging, and thankfully it is this season. So the pressure's a good thing, and you've got to use that to your advantage. And everybody says, it's going to I've said over the last few weeks on NBC commentary that these lads who are now going into this phase of games have got no idea what's coming. It's fine people talking about it, and I'm sure Zinchenko and Jesus have mentioned what it's like to be in a run-in. You can try and explain it, and that experience is invaluable, but you don't know what's coming, and they don't know what's coming. And I can tell you now, when I mentioned jokingly, how did you deal with it? And you go, panic. It's levels of panic. So this might not settle down the supporters like yourself and the fans who are looking in at expecting me to go, don't worry about it, everything's going to be fine. Well, I'm hoping, that it is going to be fine. And at some point, and it might be this season, I really hope they've got a great chance, and I really hope it is, that they will get over the line. And then you go, oh, that was what it was like. And so you take all that information in. And likewise, if they were to get pipped at the post and Man City were to overtake them, you use that feeling the next time out. And it's just gathering experience and over the years. So there'll be players in the dressing room now that are very fearful of letting everybody down. And that's kind of where it comes from. You're not fearful for yourself. It's more you go. So I'm only talking on my experience,
yeah, of course.
I can't talk about anybody else. But I was very conscious of the fans at this stage in the season of going. They're so expectant. They're so desperate to win it. You don't want to let anybody down, so you kind of tighten up a little bit, and you get a little bit safe. At the moment, this team looks like it's just full of no fear. They're full of confidence. They're just the second half against Liverpool was the first time we've all gone, hang on a minute. We're looking around, like, Mikel, what's going on? And I know I didn't have to do that because I know what's going on. I know that that's the kind of thing that can happen. That a team, especially as good as Liverpool at Anfield, 2-0 down and hurting, can come out in the second half, obviously it's 2-1, come out in the second half and go, right, we're going to have a real go. And they hit the ground running a little bit. And as a team that's 2-0 up, you can go, well, we've won this if we just do this. Mm-hmm. Well, you weren't doing that in the first half. You were doing something different. So now you've gone back to just holding on to something, and then it can kind of unravel a little bit. So that was a good experience. I think it's better off doing it against Liverpool at Anfield than doing it next week against West Ham.
Yeah.
When you're then in a position, you're one game nearer to the end. You want to have the experiences that shake them up. And I'm pretty sure Mikel this week at the training ground will have been pointing all that out and going, this is a good thing. That's a really, really good point. Make no mistake about that. And everyone's going, it's 2 lost. That could be the point that wins them the league. So, and everyone's different. Everyone deals with the pressure differently. And it actually, once you've done it once and you get over the line, which hopefully this season, then next season, next season is a different story because you kind of, to win it twice on the trot is really difficult. But you at least you've got something to fall back on and have reference, and reference is a big part at this stage.
Yeah, obviously we're being chased down by a very talented team, and there's this narrative that if Arsenal don't win it, it's a collapse, which I think is a bit ridiculous. Arsenal currently are ahead of the invincible pace for points.
Tell me who those people are, and I'll. It's a collapse.
We'll send you to do the dirty work. Some of them are probably in our fan base, to be fair, because it's. I think people want it so badly, and we've been leading the race for so long that I can understand why it would feel that way. But when you're talking about these kind of point totals and you're being chased down by that kind of team, look what they just did to Bayern Munich. Look what they've been doing, all season, and somehow they haven't been doing it as well as we have, which is really remarkable. If you had to choose, do you think it is better to be the team that has not done it, that's panicking to some extent, but also so desperate for it, or the team that maybe only has one eye on it, that has a Champions League that's important to them too, that's done it before, but done it before enough times that maybe they almost take for granted they'll do it. Because I think the presumption is we have the panic and the pressure, and so that will cause a collapse. But you've been on sort of both sides of this fence. Is it possible that the challenge City has is just as difficult in terms of staying focused, actually having the hunger for it when you're fighting on multiple fronts and you've done it before?
Well, there's two mindsets to this one. I've done both ways, and if you look at the famous one that ended at Anfield in '89,
there were 300,000 of us there at Anfield that night.
we were a similar team to the team now, because we were a bunch of youngsters who were assembled in a slightly different way, but we were a load of kids who'd not done anything, and we were going against a juggernaut of a team that's won everything and didn't really lose very often. And the whole season we were top of the league, basically, or we got to the top of the league at Christmas and went, wow, what do we do now? Tell you what we'll do, we'll throw it away and we'll go, and we did that. We got very lucky that season, but at the end of the season, when we went to Liverpool, if we did, this is my honest opinion, and it kind of gives something away to that night, in as much as if we'd have had to go to Liverpool and win the game, or get, winner takes all, Liverpool probably would have won that game. I don't think that's that's my feeling. So we got lucky. We'd won the league with 4 games to go, and then we threw it away through the pressure got to us 100%, losing at home to Derby, drawing against Liverpool, and then having to go to Anfield and win 2-0. Well, it wasn't going to happen. But then the shackles were off. We went, well, we're not going to do it, so let's just go out. And we played the worst game of football that's ever been seen in the first half. It was a terrible football match. But we had something on Liverpool then, because they then, as experienced as they were, they then flipped into this team that was, do you know what? We only need to draw the game or lose 1-0. So that game was mentally won and lost.
Interesting.
No doubt about that. So now this team, and I've also chased United down in 98. Chasing. I think we were 13 points behind United with 3 games in hand or something, and it was a ridiculous kind of chase down. But the chasing a team down is exciting. It's really, really exciting. Are you still there? Because you've frozen.
Yep. Oh yeah, I'm still here. Fire away. If you're not seeing me, this little recording thing we're using is like magic. It all puts it together at the end. So,
okay,
and seeing me is the worst part of this experience, anyways.
Yeah, chasing someone down is exciting because the pressure is off. You kind of go, we've kind of lost it, so we just have to win every game. That is where City are right in that now. They've got a slightly different thing because they're desperate for the Champions League, and we're kind of, me as a player is kind of going, obviously if you give them a choice now, they'd take the Champions League 100%.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And even if they were level, they'd go, we'll take the Champions. Each game we want to win both. No, you can't win both. Pick one. Pep would pick Champions League. We know that. So that's kind of in our favour, because there might be a little bit of that going on but you quite rightly said they've been there, they've done it, they know what they're doing, they know they have to win every game. That's an advantage for them. So I think even if we'd have won at Anfield last weekend, it wasn't over. You go back to 8 points, it wasn't over. It's not going to be over until right near the end, till the fat lady's singing, because we're in a position now where I genuinely believe City won't lose another game apart from the game we're playing. All the other games they'll just knock over. I believe that. We've still got 3. We've got Brighton at home, we've got Chelsea at home, we've got
Newcastle away,
Newcastle away, and City away. If you pick those 4 games out at the start of the season, you go, Newcastle away, even if they're just an average Newcastle side, that place to go and play is difficult. Now the fact that they're chasing 3rd spot and they're absolutely buzzing is a massively difficult game. Brighton always is a difficult game. So, and obviously Chelsea, we don't know which Chelsea will turn up, but there's a London derby, so you're always going to get a bit of competition. So, and obviously the City game is just, how big is that now? It's big.
It feels like the title decider. It feels a bit of Anfield '89 in the sense that we'll go there, I think, needing to get something with the youngest team in the league, trying to do something incredible against the team that everybody expects to do it, having led the league most of the season. Yeah. So it's hard not to see echoes of '89 in that. One of the things that you spoke so eloquently about the last time we talked was the Arsenal and the importance of the traditions and feeling like Arsenal again. And it was September 21. So we were just coming out of some of the challenges we'd had with some senior players that maybe weren't on the boat, and others that were getting ready to be removed from the boat. And setting the football aside for a moment, because I think we all love the football we're seeing right now. And I think you also made interesting points about football's football. Keep it out of your net, get it in the other net, right? We get too caught up in the tactical battle at times. Yeah. But in terms of restoring a bit of the connection to the supporters, connection to the history, connection to taking pride in the badge and doing things the right way. Obviously, there are academy players involved in this squad now. There's a lot of young players, and yet they seem to get it, in quotes, in ways that maybe some of the senior pros didn't in the past. How would you evaluate the turnaround Mikel's made in terms of the feeling around the club? And I know, look, let's not be silly. A lot of feeling around the club is, did you put 3 points on the board on the weekend? But I do think that there's something different about what he's built here. And I'm curious how you evaluate the period from September 21, when we last spoke, to now, and the distance we've traveled, not just on the pitch, but as a club.
Incredible. And he takes, I have to take my hat off to him and say that he's single-handedly, him and his staff, but his ideas about the club, he got the Arsenal when he was a player. I don't know him personally. I didn't play with him, but I know that the traditions of the club were very important to him, which is a brilliant sign when any manager takes over, that they get that. And the first thing he did, as good a job as Emery's doing at Villa, it's safe to say that he didn't quite get the club for some reason. I don't understand why, but I wasn't there. But I know that he didn't like the pressure that the club, the Arsenal, had over, or he presumed had over the players. So he de-Arsenalised the training ground. He took all the pictures down. He took all the memories of past victories down. He didn't want the players walking in to train and kind of looking around and going, oh my God, we're under pressure. He didn't like that. That was his style. And that's not what I believe in. That's not genuinely what most of the Arsenal people that have been through those doors believe in. And certainly not what Arsene believed in. He got it straight away, and Mikel's the same. And he came in and he kind of looked round, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but I believe from people that are in the training ground and the stadium training ground manager, that the first thing he did was come round and go, where are we? It was the fact that it got Arsenal outside the gates was perhaps the only clue as to where you were. And he said, where is everybody? Where are the pictures? Where's, and he took it upon himself they've changed all the meeting rooms, all the places, the video rooms. They've all got different panelled walls with all the previous achievements of players, who played for England this many times, all the squad numbers in the past, the history of the play. You walk in there now and you can see every little bit of Arsenal history. The first thing you see when you walk in the training ground on the left is a 20-foot high Arsene Wenger. He's there. He's looking over everybody as you walk in, making sure that you understand it's who you are, what you are, and who you represent. It's kind of like, that's been written since the club was formed, and I think that's a brilliant thing. And what he's done with that as well, he's also transformed that connection from the players to the club, to the fans, back to the club again. And I believe that anyone who's been to the Emirates this season, and it helps that you're winning every week, Don't you mentioned that already. But even if you lose a game or you don't play particularly well, I've not been at the Emirates when it's been that connected. He's really taken the fans on a journey, and he's connected the team again to the fans, and that's an amazing thing. And all credit to him. He's gone about it in a very kind of processed, set way that looks a bit clinical from the outside, but I believe from my insiders, that he's done that pretty much on his own, and said this is what with Vinay and with Edu. Edu gets it well. He
of course
played with us in our team, so Edu. We made sure Edu got it. If you didn't get it when you were with us a lot, you didn't last very long. So, and Edu did last quite a long time. So, and he's an invincible, so he gets it.
It's so fascinating because the irony of what you described with Unai Emery's approach to it, like if I were walking into that training ground, seeing those pictures, seeing that history, I'd feel 10 feet tall to feel connected to all of that. Say, wow, I'm a part of this. I must be pretty damn good and pretty damn special. And I have something to live up to now. So I think it can also...
Maybe it was some... I don't know. Maybe it's something about himself. Maybe he felt under pressure that the eyes of George Graham and Herbert Chapman and Arsene Wenger were looking down on him. Maybe he didn't feel comfortable, which is fine. He's a manager. He can do what he wants. But, you're rubbing not only tradition up the wrong way, but certainly the Arsenal people that are still at the club, both at the training ground and the Emirates, albeit it's not Highbury, it's still, our home. And you're a brave man to change tradition like that over 100 and whatever it is years to go, I'm going to do this now. So maybe that's about him rather than what he thought the players might think. But ultimately, and it's the same at United, it's the same at Liverpool, it's the same at the real traditional English football clubs, that that weight, I think Thierry said it and a few people have said it, the weight of the shirt is heavy. Yeah. And if you can't carry that shirt, then take it off politely, fold it up, put it back on the peg, and the door's over there.
Off you pop. Yeah. It's interesting because you look at certain clubs like Liverpool, for example, and you have a manager there in Klopp, who seems to get it and fit. And you look at another club that we like to laugh about quite a bit from North London, and they've gone through this revolving door recently of high-profile managers who feel too big for the club, who are interlopers, right? Who are there for their own identity, not to forge an identity at the club. Yeah. And you see how that works. And to your point, look, right from the U18s, right? You have Jack Wilshere, Per Mertesacker, Mikel Arteta, Edu. You want the best people. But if the best people can also be people that have that DNA, have some kind of connection to the club, then I think you're able to forge an identity, and we're seeing that clearly.
Absolutely. And what it also does is it buys you some time as well, because if you are that type, if you are an Arsenal man and you've got that in you, when the bad times come, and they will come, and Mikel's had them, the first 18 months of him being there, it was like, what's going on? We're not doing very well, and we're not. Now you just got to be patient. This is this is how I'm going to do it, and it buys you a bit of time. I think as soon as you could come in and completely. And the case in point is what you talked about with Tottenham. Big managers have come in and made a good start, and then they look as if they're going places. But as soon as it starts to go a little bit awry, then all of a sudden the fans don't stay on your side for very long.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful thing we're building. Obviously, we'd like to see it culminate in a title this season. It feels like it will carry on longer term. One of the areas, though, that we should touch on, since we have you on the podcast, is the back four. Mm-hmm. And another thing, I listened back to our discussion from September 2021. It was so interesting because a big through line of that conversation was we're building a back four that can stay forged together for years, similar to the one you built. But we were talking Tomiyasu, White, Gabriel, and Tierney. Yeah. And now it's White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Zinchenko. So it has already changed. It's a very different type of back four in some ways, but it's a very talented back four. There's no denying that. Unfortunately, Saliba not available right now, but thinking Saliba at the age that he's doing it, Gabriel, relatively young for a center back.
Yeah.
Ben White still just sort of coming into his prime, and Zinchenko about, sort of in his prime. What's your take on the remodeled back four from our last conversation, and how this one really, I think, is maybe underappreciated for its defensive qualities, because we think of Zinchenko, as a midfielder, and Saliba can pass and White can, but I think especially the center back duo might be the best in the league right now.
Yeah, and again, great credit to Mikel for the way that he's handled. Ben White as well, but certainly it's Saliba with the sending him being out on loan, and the process that he's gone through to picking up that experience and the ability to be able to hold yourself and your chin high and walk out there and be an Arsenal centre back. There's been countless amazing ones over the past, and also the lack of a partnership over the years has been well documented and well talked about by everybody, saying, well, they haven't had a decent partnership for years, and since Sol Campbell and Yaya Toure, it's been a gaping hole in the team. And now that eventually they've it's almost like they've sneaked in overnight and gone, don't tell anyone, we're just going to form this partnership and then we're just going to get on with it. And which is, I have to say that I recognise that, because it's kind of what we did. We went for seemingly quite a long time just getting on with our business without everybody going on about the back four, and then all of a sudden somebody mentioned it one day.
It was done.
Chat rooms in them days, somewhere in the paper went, the Arsenal back four, and then it became a thing, and we were like, what's this thing they keep talking about? We're just going out and doing our job. It's like, that's what I get paid for. It's not anything special. It's what we do. And it
was to us.
Looking back on it, you always look back on it now and go, wow, yeah, we were pretty good, and da-da-da. But at the time, you're just kind of going, oh yeah, we didn't. Oh, it's 1-0. Yeah, we didn't let a goal in, and and then it becomes a thing when you're playing, and it did certainly towards the end. It kind of resonated with us that we knew what we were doing, and I think that showed itself with the fact that Arsene came in and was getting ready to get rid of us all, and then realised and went, actually, better keep them for a bit longer, because they seem to know what they're doing, and they're actually a lot fitter than I thought it was, and they're not as old. And even though the age said something, actually physically we were quite a fit back four anyway. So he kept us, and that was the biggest accolade that Arsene could have paid us, to say, no, you get on with it. And I played another 6 years after he came. So it was a long, when you look, I was there 14 and a half years. So just under half I was with Arsene. It was an incredible kind of journey with him. But it was in the early days, it was kind of like, and this is what this back four's like now. It's kind of sneaked in on us, and you're like, oh, there it is. Because as you said, the team is playing so well that the emphasis with what we've got up front and how the midfield is set up is very attack minded, and you kind of sometimes forget what's going on behind. And certainly we've got Ramsdale in goal, who's just off the charts good. And,
incredible.
And how brilliant he is to watch and entertaining. And he'll make the odd mistake, but show me a goalie who doesn't. And but I think, some of his performances has certainly helped a back four. And I can tell you from experience that if you've got somebody you're not that bothered about behind, and you don't have to worry about, it doesn't half make this in front of you a lot easier, because you can set your line. He's sweeping up behind. You don't have to have any worry about that ball that's just a bit too long, because he'll sweep it up. And his shot stopping is, you can. You should always follow the ball back when somebody shoots, but with him, it just gives you a bit more of a safety blanket, because he's got half a chance of saving it. So your position, as far as you take up in the penalty area, you're not thinking about it, but you start to behave in a slightly unthinking way about your positioning, because the goalie's safe, which is a big plus as a defender.
Yeah, and I think it allows you to not feel like, well, if I don't slide in and take the ball or do something rash, the keeper's going to let it in, right? So suddenly you don't have to give away the red card. You don't have to give away the penalty, pick up a red card.
You said it a lot more eloquently than I did, but that's what I was getting at. Because there is that moment when you were in a box and you go, and we used to have it with Dave Seaman, you could get in a position, right? We used to have they play slightly differently now, but we never used to go into the penalty area. That white line that's called the 18-yard line, George Graham said, that's a cliff. And if you step into the box, you'll drop 500,000 miles into hell. So you basically do not go into the box. So we used to hold the line rigid. And so anyone who comes around the penalty area, we're not going backwards. So we're going to try and go forwards to press. But I used to shout a lot of the time because I knew he was so good. I used to say to players, I used to encourage him to shoot. I used to go, shoot. It's amazing in a game. If somebody's half thinking about shooting and you say shoot to them, they shoot. And as soon as they shot from 20 yards, 25 yards, because we're holding that line, I know they're not going to score unless it's right in the top corner. And I think with Ramsdale, you've got that. You can kind of take a position where you go, shoot, go on, have a shot, because he'll save it. So you're on the front foot all the time.
Yeah. And I think that the profile of these players really complements one another. Gabriel probably is not appreciated as much as he should be, although I saw a lot of Liverpool supporters having some kind words for him about his performance at Anfield. Yeah. When Saliba was there, he's very eye-catching with his long strides, his recovery pace, his ball playing ability. Yeah. But with him out, I think people are really seeing the spotlight on Gabriel, and he's been excellent. So I think he deserves a lot of credit.
I have to step in there and say that Rob Holding's done a brilliant job.
Absolutely.
Filling in for Saliba, because there's a huge amount of pressure on Rob. He's one of the best pros around. The team love him. He's the heart and soul of the dressing room. He gets on with his training. He came in last year and got sent off against Tottenham, and he's had a few hiccups here and there. But so going into a title running and one of your best defenders getting injured and him stepping in, he's done a brilliant job, and he's an absolute lovely guy. So you couldn't wish better performance going to him, because he's done a brilliant job, and it's not easy stepping into those boots.
Oh, it's great. I mean, he's in the leadership group for a reason. That during All or Nothing, there was like just one little moment. It's interesting. You got little candid moments in that show. Some of it obviously is very produced, but they were signing cards. I can't remember if it was for like a birthday or someone get well soon or something. And it was right after Aubameyang had basically been banished, and everybody's signing cards, and Holding just turns around to Mikel and goes, "Should I sign one for Oba?" And like everybody cracks up. And I think having that personality that can just put a smile on everyone's face, even in stressful times, and take the edge off is great. I also think it would be look, unfortunately, football is sometimes a fairy tale and sometimes it's a nightmare, but Holding had a performance at Tottenham last season that I'm sure he'd like to have back. I think the emotion got to him a little bit, and it didn't go the way he would have liked, of course. And for him to maybe get a chance to pay back a little of that now on the way to a title would be very meaningful. So, I'd love to have Saliba back, but for right now, I think you're right. Holding deserves a lot of praise for what he's done. And by the way, it's unfortunate we don't have Tomiyasu as well, right? Because that would give us even that little bit more flexibility. So I did have on the list to talk Saka and Martinelli. We don't have to be. I feel like saying they're great is pretty much all that needs to be said. Do you have anything you want to add on that? It's just having two stunning young stars up front like that it makes it that much more fun to root for this team for me.
Sorry. What I've been really impressed with is that their ability on the ball is incredible. We know that. They're both quick. They're both really good pros. They're both I went to watch training the end of last season, and just to watch them training was like, it was like, wow, I'm sure we didn't used to train that hard. They were like, this was like practice 8v8 game, and they were flying into, dribbles. And I was like, wow, it seems like they're taking it a lot more seriously than I did. and it was just an incredible thing to watch. And that's there to be seen. But I think what's been really impressive about the pair of them is their intelligence of understanding what's required from Mikel's coaching, because he asks them to do a couple of things that wingers are not normally accustomed to doing. And that's, normally, especially because they're wide wingers, they're not kind of inside going out. They're outside coming in. And that's a different role. When a fullback gets the ball, you want, when I was playing, when I get the ball, I want my winger to go right onto the touchline to try and spread the back four. So it gives me more of a ball on the inside, in the inside channels for the forwards. But the way Arsenal play, obviously, when they hit the touchlines and the fullbacks who are marking them sort of spread like normal, but then they, just before delivery, Ben White doesn't have to play the ball out to the touchline. He actually plays a straight ball or slightly inside. For instance, the goal against Liverpool where Saka's, and you can see if you watch him, which is obviously it's a little bit easier if you're live because you can see not where the camera's, because the camera might be on Ben White at the time and you actually miss the pass, but when you miss the movement before. But if you watch him live and watch the timing of, Ben gets the ball and he's waiting for Saka to make that run in field, and then he plays it into the path. And that, as a fullback, that messes you up completely because you're like, well, I really don't want to go in there. Robertson doesn't want to go in there. He wants to be safe in his little fullback area. All of a sudden, Saka's running at pace, and his first touch is going to be brilliant. And Martinelli does the same thing on the left hand side. And then they go into that area and then people make runs off them and it just opens the whole pitch up. And Mikel's obviously spent a lot of time with the pair of them doing that in training. But they picked it up really quickly because that's not a natural thing for a winger to do. They want to stay wide, they want to get the ball and they want to have a little dribble, go in, go out. But it's the actual run into a ball that's played inside that they've picked up brilliantly well. And it gives them options that the opposition back fours don't like playing against.
Yeah, and it seems like a little tweak, but it changes the space it puts those players into to impact the game. By the way, you mentioned not being able to see the whole pitch. Some people at NBC. Can you ask them for an all 22 view? The NFL has a camera they call all 22. You can see all 22 players, and you can watch the game and see everything happening. And when you're at the Emirates, or I went to the Leicester game as well, and you can see the whole pitch, you really do get a sense of those little tweaks and those moves. So when they
there is I'm just trying to think. They call it tactical in England. It's called the tactical camera. There is one at every Premier League game, so there is an opportunity. The boy, funny enough, the lads use it in the studio to highlight analysis. Yeah. But I'm guessing, well, they're at they see that one. It's not even NBC because they're at the whim of the director in the UK, right. And they don't often switch to the tactical camera during live play, which I think is missing something.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think the NFL does that either, but the NFL has its own network, and if you pay to subscribe, you have an option, I think, to view the games that way, or pay for the feed. Anyway, it was not an important point I'm making, but one that
listen, what the fans want to see. So I'm into all that because I want. What frustrates me, I'm a flipping subject a little bit here, but what really frustrates me is I watch every golf event that's on the TV because I'm golf crazy. Is that they put a camera behind the guy going to hit the ball to the green, and then they stand right behind him, and you think, oh, you're going to see, and you can see the flag in the distance, and he's got a wedge in, and you're like, and then just as he hits it, the camera goes like that and follows the ball, and I'm like, why don't they just, if they stayed with the shot, you wouldn't see the ball in the air, but then you zoom into the green, you'd be able to see it land just how the player sees it. It's perfect, and nobody does it. And I'm like, well, there's definitely who's directing these golf games. It's like these golf cameras. It's just
Lee Dixon, technical director for golf. There you go. New job.
And I'm going to get the tactical cam for you so you can see it as well.
All right. Well, I mean, look. All you have to tell the Premier League is there's money to be made making it available, and it'll be available before the end of the season. I've taken up more of your time than I anticipated, so I'll wrap there. But I always enjoy hearing you speak about the game, speaking about the Arsenal. I did get to listen back to the September 2021 episode, and it was fantastic. This is great. So hopefully we'll have a chance to do it again. I'm going to the Wolves game on the final day.
Okay,
so I will feel the panic you have described palpably.
Well, you must hopefully the NBC game, because we're going to win the league.
There you go. Should be.
if we've not won it by then, or it looks like Man City are going to win it, either me or Graham will be at one or the other. So I'm hoping to be at the Arsenal one. So you have to come into the NBC truck and we can have a cup of tea.
It'll be my pleasure. A cup of tea will probably be what I'll need at that point, because anything stronger, I don't know if I'll make it through the day. So, Lee, great to talk to you. Maybe see you before the end of the season, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, pal. Anytime.
Thank you. And now the bonanza continues with some proper Arsenal men. I kid. It's not going to get much more proper than we just had, but they are Arsenal men nonetheless. And in fact, I would say for his home and away attendance for decades now, Tim certainly qualifies as a proper Arsenal man. Tim's on Twitter @Stilminator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there, and thank you for that August introduction.
Yeah,
I don't think that was the right use of the word there, but we'll roll with it.
The good news is I don't know what the word means, so I can just presume it means whatever you used it.
August refers to like a publication. If you say like, oh, it's an August publication, it kind of means it's very trusted, reliable.
I don't want to push back on you with vocabulary because I know you know your words, but I think you're confusing it. August is actually a month that follows July. So,
of course. Yeah.
And the reason I know that is because that's when the transfer window closes. So,
one will be playing in the Community Shield next season.
Ooh, the nerves. You kicked him right off. And here with me now, a man who has watched Arsenal before is Paul. You can find him on Twitter @PauseMyPants.
Woohoo.
Was that August enough for you, or a little more July?
August.
Yeah. It's
from the Latin. Basically meaning
Augustus.
Passion stuck up like a Caesar.
Like a Caesar, exactly. Yeah. Or an Augustus. Okay, guys, that was a good one. Let's save that one in the time capsule. Good way to follow Lee Dixon there.
Thanks, Latin banter.
Latin banter. Well, I do want to wish Clive a safe flight. He is flying to New York. I will be following suit momentarily. Paul is on his way tomorrow. We are going to be there Saturday. It's going to be a fantastic time. We hope to see you there. If you can't go to the live event, come to one of the other events happening around that event. If that made sense, you can tell I've used up all my good podcast hosting on the prior segment. Let's just get into this. Tim,
we could talk about Saturday and Saturn and the
Day,
Roman god and Saturnalis and
the day of the Sabbath.
Really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so enough of that. Now, Tim, we're going to talk West Ham preview for most of this, but I just want to start a little bit with Manchester City. I talked to Clive about this on the heard of them maybe? They're the team that's behind us in the Premier League table, like all the other 19 teams. Talk to Clive about this. By the way, if you want to check it out on Patreon, we did a rewatch of the Liverpool second half, and I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. It's not bias. I know you're going to roll your eyes out of your head. That second half is not a bad performance in a lot of ways, and you should rewatch it if you get the chance. I know there are a lot of you that, again, are rolling your eyes out of your head. It's worth the rewatch. I think it will actually give you more confidence about who we are right now, because under immense pressure and immense challenge, I thought we actually did a lot of good things that you probably missed in the panic of the moment. I know I did. I think I got my read a little wrong on that post-match. So worth the rewatch. That's over on Patreon if you want to watch, or just rewatch wherever you can. But Tim, City blowing away Bayern Munich, blowing away everyone at the moment, looking really, really hungry to win every game they play, and they certainly have the talent to do just that. Having said that, Chelsea did not beat Real Madrid 3-0 at the Bernabeu, which Todd Bowley predicted. It looks like Madrid will probably go on to face City. That's going to be another kettle of fish and another level of concentration they're going to have to put in. How concerned are you about City's pretty terrifying form right now, and the idea that maybe they will go on and win all their games except the Arsenal game, which of course could wind up then being a title decider, maybe a little like Anfield 89 in some ways.
I hesitate to kind of whip out the sleepers analogy again, where the hot dog vendor's chasing the kid who's nicked the hot dog and he's going, give up, give up. Just let me run away with it. Give up. Because essentially, we've all suspected this might happen all season, that City particularly, it's almost like that kind of Circadian rhythm that a team like City will have from being in the title race year on year on year, that just something in them in March, April, May just wakes up a little bit, and they just have that kind of muscle memory. We've all probably had that in the back of our minds. I've pretty much always suspected that game at the Etihad. Like, I couldn't see a world in which we go to that game at the Etihad and it didn't matter a lot to both teams. I just didn't see that world. I didn't see that world where it's like, oh, we're 20 points clear. It doesn't even matter if we look like that was never going to happen. And given that the season finishes in late May as well, so there's like 4 or 5 games in May. Even if we'd gone into that game, I don't know, 8-9 points clear on the same amount of games, which isn't going to happen now because of the way the fixture calendar is. But even if we'd like a defeat, just it's a switch and bait, isn't it, on the psychology of the title race? So I never ever expected to go to the Etihad feeling slightly indifferent about what the result was. I always felt that would be very pivotal. The advantage we've got at this moment in time, and this could change clearly, is that we probably don't have to win that game. So all of the kind of expectation and everything will be on City. Nevertheless, yeah, of course I'm scared. I've been scared all season. There have been a couple of points where I've thought, oh, we can like when Eddie puts that goal in against Manchester United, I was like, oh, this feels like our season. And maybe the week before when we kind of batter Tottenham, because they get battered everywhere they go, even when they don't go anywhere. I kind of, I had that feeling. Do you know, just to switch to an anecdote from about over 20 years ago, when Arsenal won the league in 2002, we were drawn away at Watford in the third round in the FA Cup, and me and my mate Jim were just kind of standing there, and the team were warming up, and he just turned to me and he said, "They just look like the champions to me." He just said, "They look to me like this in the warm up." They just look to me like the team that's going to win the league. And sometimes you get that feeling. And I admit I've had that feeling a couple of times this season, but also the other baggage that we're carrying as Arsenal fans is not just that we haven't been here in a title race sense in so long. It's the fact that there were lots of points last season where I felt we're going to get in the top 4. It's all going to be fine. Like last season felt like our season, It had all those like emotional checkpoints that usually happen when you achieve your target, and it didn't happen. And we blew that at the end. So obviously we've kind of got that junk in the trunk, as it were. So I'm scared, but I never expected not to be quite honest with you. And look, City, they've pretty much never, other than, one season where they won every game at this stage. So I think there's still a lot in play here for both teams. I still think they'll drop points somewhere, but I think we probably will too. So hang on to your hats, basically.
Yeah, well said, all of that. And one of the places we could drop points is away to West Ham. I don't think we will, and I certainly hope we won't. And that means we can shift gears to that aspect of the conversation. And Paul, I'm glad I did this Liverpool rewatch, because in a way I've come away thinking, wow, we dominated them in the first half and we actually played pretty well in the second half. And it looks like a much better point than I thought. Well, let me put it this way. A much better point in terms of how we played, a much worse point in the sense that I actually think we could have taken all 3 points, more than maybe I even realized. But we now go to West Ham. The focus has to stay the same. I do think this team needed to be in one competition right now. I think it is helpful for us to have a week of proper training and really be focused on this. Do you, just thinking lineups and changes or anything like that, do you see us making any change? I mean, Trossard will feel aggrieved anytime he's not in the starting lineup, but when you have great players up front, not every great player can start. I can't see us changing anything other than that, if that's the change we make. How do you think we'll approach this from a lineup standpoint?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he's going to have to wait for something to happen to somebody. And like there's 5 players who could get a bit of a niggle, and Trossard's your first man. Anybody in the front three, and probably our right and left eights right now. If Odegaard's a little off it, has a little bit of an issue. I mean, if Xhaka has a little bit of an issue, maybe because Xhaka has the beefier of the two roles there, with the responsibilities going both ways. But like, Trossard is probably a good shout for any of those 5 positions, and certainly 4 of the 5. And that's just kind of how it is. But we could also need a sub at any one of those positions at 60, 70 minutes. So I think right now that's where it is. Thierry Henry asked who's the best left winger on the planet, and says Vinicius Jr., but there's a couple of fellas at Arsenal on the way up. And pushing hard. So like the hype never dies. Basically Martinelli in the frame for that. You can't move away from Martinelli. Can't really move away from Gabriel Jesus, I don't think. Though, he's still fresh back. So you never know with Jesus. They might look at it at some stage and say, we need to dial it back a little bit, or not put too much on him. But yeah, I think Trossard is going to have to wait. Unless Saliba is right there. I know we have my line for the big games that come, City, etc. But it'd be nice if he played a few minutes along the way. So I guess if he were up to it, they might want to give him a spin at some stage, but they'll probably leave it another game still before bringing him in. So yeah, I think it's pretty settled. Like the City thing, I didn't want to be too consolation-y after the Liverpool. By the way, I fully agree on the Liverpool second half watch. I did find nobody really wanted to hear that, by the way, when I mooted that.
No, I know. It's the emotion of the moment. It's a read the room situation, Paul, which, let's be fair, you have a lot of strengths in your analysis of football, but reading the room may not be the top of the list.
No, it's good. It's like, what would I say that would actually piss these people off?
So maybe you're great at reading the room.
I think I'm excellent at it. Like, the other thing I said that wasn't very popular at the time is, you absolutely want to win. You absolutely want to take the 3 points. But to the Lee Dixon point, we might be a team psychologically that didn't need to be over hyped, which is what would have happened after Anfield. Now, again, I'll take those 3 points all day long if that's the on offer. But this is maybe a team that I don't think needs to be an underdog, but like the level of fucking hype on these guys, had we won at Anfield, I think would have just blown everybody's mind. It would have been unbearable, not in the good way. And City need to screw up for us, and we need to basically be perfect the way we say we're afraid City can and may be perfect. We can absolutely win each one of our games, get a draw at the Etihad. All of that is possible if the only reason we wouldn't win all our games is if our focus gets off. Either we get down on ourselves or too up on ourselves, or we get some injuries. And so us being back to where our focus is just about right, not so overhyped, not having to deal with all of that huge noise outside, like we can actually keep winning all our games and get a draw at the Etihad. And yeah, it starts with West Ham. There's no reason, obviously, we can't win this. It's not like we're going to come out of the Liverpool game thinking away games are easy. So, I don't know. I think we'll be pretty dialed in for this one, the next one. It's okay. I'd much prefer the 3 points. We've obviously got terrifying opposition, but we only play them once. And we kind of outplayed them for a good chunk of the game at the Emirates, and I think it's going to be a much closer competition than before, and they may underestimate us a little bit, I think.
And they have Real Madrid on the horizon, and that's going to be their priority.
They've also got Bayern.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get it yesterday. They won 3-1. They were really good. They were incredibly impressive at times. Bayern absolutely could have been 1-1. at any point in that game up to
They won
when
3-0, just to be clear.
Against
Bayern.
Didn't they score?
No.
Well, they
should have.
No. Yeah, but they could have been 1-1.
Yes.
For big chunks of that game, right?
Yes. City are more. I'm saying this, and I'm sure the data people will say that the data doesn't bear you out. They feel more open, or at least more gettable defensively than maybe they have been in the past.
Yeah, and I thought Bayern were really, really good. Now, don't get me wrong. Overall, 3-0, very fair score. But now they have to go, like they've got done away at big teams and big grounds before. So I'm not saying they're going to win against Bayern. I don't get it's all done and dusted. Bayern at home.
Let's say this: we want it to be done and dusted because we want them to have the Madrid tie.
Actually, what we want is it to be 4-3 or so. Some crazy. Like I don't get will City rotate heavily for Bayern? No, they fucking won't.
They won't do that. I agree.
And
but
it's
what
not
I mean
just because they're being cautious. They've got a big game at Bayern.
Yeah,
and so. Yeah, they've got loads of work to do, and it's going to take emotional, physical, injuries happen. It's a lot of games to play.
I said it. If Bayern resort to violence, I mean, I know they've resorted to violence amongst themselves, among one another, with Sané and Mane punching each other, apparently. But it's all good.
My money's on Mane.
Yeah, Tim, the West Ham game is interesting because I think we were rooting for West Ham to get a result so that Moyes would still be in this job. I mean, we just keep seeming to have new manager bounce all season long. By the way, City faced a new manager bounce, although not much of a new manager there.
I was a bit more excited when it sounded like they were going to get Benitez because I thought, if anyone's capable of getting like a roadblock 0-0 against City, it's probably Benitez, but I don't think it's Dean Smith, unfortunately.
Just to stay on that for a second, the problem with Leicester as a matchup for City is like, if you asked me where Leicester could improve, I'd say they can score. They've got good attackers. They can't keep anybody out. Like their defense is a shambles. So I expect that. I expect Leicester to score and that game to end like 7-2. But our game, which is really what we're here to talk about, is at West Ham. They're dreadful. And I go into this thing, they're bad. It's no problem. But then you look at the squad and you're like, well, he could do, he's got something about him. And it just feels like one of those games where the table isn't telling me everything I need to know about this team. So why are they so bad? And should I not be worried about this squad that's not playing very well, but looks like it should be better than it is, and especially Declan Rice wanting to impress his future employers? Yeah,
you're right. They have got good players. What they've lost is they've lost quite a lot of, first of all, a lot of their success under Moyes a season or two ago was built on that kind of Rice-Soucek partnership, which was very, very complimentary. Maybe not in Rice's case, but in Soucek's case, much, much better than the sum of its parts. And now they're kind of doing Rice and Paquetá is a much better player, but the balance has perhaps been adjusted a little bit. And also, like Moyes, what the most fascinating thing to me about Moyes' career is strikers. Like he just, wherever he goes, like at Everton, he bought Yakubu, Andy Johnson, James Beattie, all complete flops. And he's gone to West Ham. He had Sebastian Haller, flopped. Where's he now? Is it like been at Ajax and Borussia Dortmund doing really well? He bought Scamacca, has barely been fit. Like all of the goals in Moyes teams tend to come from deeper midfielders. So you remember, I think during the COVID season, they had Lingard on loan and Lingard was scoring all their goals, and at Everton, Tim Cahill was scoring all of their goals. There's something about Moyes teams where the striker doesn't score unless they're repurposed. So one bit of success he did have at West Ham, they had Arnautovic and he turned him into a striker and he did really well. And Mikel Antonio, who was a fullback or a winger, he turned him into a striker. And so there's just something about David Moyes' career where this has been a theme where when he buys an actual striker, it doesn't work. So either all the goals come from a deeper midfielder or he just repurposes someone else into a good striker. But essentially what West Ham don't have, like, Scamacca's not been fit. They've bought Danny Ings, and Danny Ings, again, he's like the most strikery striker that ever strikered, and he's not doing it at West Ham. So what I'm saying David Moyes needs to do is just pull a random fullback from somewhere or something and put him up front, and then their problems will probably be solved. But they're kind of their biggest goal threat, I think, is Jared Bowen, who kind of comes off that right wing and is a lot more like a second striker, and he's a bit tricky. And again, you look at the way we dealt with Salah at Anfield because of Zinchenko's roaming, was to put Gabriel on him. So I think Gabriel will stay very close to Jared Bowen. But I mean, I think some of it is maybe Moyes' message just gets lost after a while, particularly with the style of football, which is fairly attritional. I mean, the thing is, when you go to West Ham, all of the cliches I think are relatively true. It's a London derby, blah, blah, blah. Just don't let them in the game, basically. Like, it's easy to keep that crowd quiet, but if you let that crowd in early on, you can be in for a game. In the Emery season, we lost there 1-0, and the first half was dreadful. Both teams were utterly dreadful, and that gave West Ham all the encouragement they needed, and they won 1-0. The times we go there and win, we tend to just shut them down, and the place goes quiet. And West Ham is quite often an unhappy club, quite often on the verge of sacking a manager, quite often on the verge of breaking into the director's box to throttle the owners. Like, it's on that. They're quite often on that kind of tipping point, precipice. And so, yeah, I think this is kind of one where you do have to play the crowd, and this is going to be another one. Start like we did at Anfield, and it will be no problem. Basically would be my kind of assessment, and Arsenal have shown a good proclivity for doing that this season, for starting games quickly, particularly away from home, actually.
Yeah. And just one thing to bear in mind. I know you may laugh at me bringing this up. They have a European tie tonight as we record this against Ghent away, and then the return leg next week. If you're West Ham and you think you're not going down, I mean, they could, but I don't think they are. You could win a European trophy. All right, whatever. I don't even know what they're calling it. The Nations Capital League Cup, Betway,
Conference
365, League. Conference Cup. Like, I don't know. Conference League. But it's a European trophy, and you're West Ham. And you could win it. Like, you could legitimately win it. You have Ghent away today as we record this, and then you got Arsenal, and then you got Ghent again. And if that tie is live, maybe I'm being ridiculous. I don't think it's crazy to think they might have an eye on it. I mean, if we were West Ham fans, that's a scary thought. But if we were West Ham fans, like, we'd be wanting the Conference Trophy League tie, Cup, Nations, Betway 365 League tie. I don't know, whatever it's called. We'd want it. And we wanted a hell of a lot more than a point against Arsenal. I'll give you some scary stats if you want scary, just a little bit of scary. Do you guys want scary? Let's do a little scary. As bad as they've been, defensively, on expected goals allowed, they're fifth. Fifth. They have a positive expected goal difference for the season. And unexpected goals scored, that's where they're not so good.
It's the attack that's the problem. That's why I talked about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so I'm just saying, like, but I almost think that plays into our hands. And the only reason I say that is we're going to go up the pitch. We're going to have all the ball up there, and we're going to attack like mad. What we want to know is how dangerous are they going the other way? They haven't been very dangerous this season, and ultimately I don't know they'll be able to keep us out. I do think that the fact that they play away in Europe right now, we know that tends to have a bearing on how teams play during on the weekend. We don't have a game, as you know, which I think right now we're all happy for. So, Paul, weighing all of that, I still think it favors us. I mean, of course it favors us. We're top of the league and they're battling relegation. But so do you think that midweek fixture might, am I overdoing it there? Do you think that might be just a little extra benefit for us? I mean, if I'm Moyes, I'm looking at Europe as a way to end this season on a high.
I mean, it's not going to help them. It's going to put some extra minutes in the legs, all that kind of thing. But his future He's got to be looking at this weekend thinking, will I have a job at the end of it? And that won't be because of Ghent. If he gets turned over against us...
If they beat Ghent away something like 1-0 or something, and they have a second leg, and they're looking like they could win a European trophy, and the team at the top of the table comes in and beats them, like, is that really going to cost Moyes his job? Don't you think he might say, I think I have a much better chance saving my job against Ghent than I do against Arsenal?
Well, it depends on how he gets beat. Like, if we rubbish them at the weekend, he could be in deep doo-doo in terms of his job. And maybe that's not the weekend he goes, but like it's another hole in the hull of his boat. So he needs a bit of a result against Ghent. That's good news. That's the good news for us. But he absolutely can't get beaten at home badly and look abject against Arsenal. And then the game after that, lose that, and then he's done. So I think his eggs are going to be largely he needs a good performance at home in the Premier League at the weekend, because he's got to give his ownership and his supporters the belief that they can stay up and that they won't get themselves... Now, losing 1-0 to Arsenal at the weekend won't be fatal for him, or a 2-1 or anything, that looks competitive against the top of the league team. But he can't get turned over. So, like, I think his career is much more and he's probably much more optimistic about getting a reasonable result against Ghent, whatever it is, even if it's not what he needs. So I think he's going to be largely girding his loins for the weekend, making sure that gets full priority so that he can shine, would be the wrong word, but not look abject at the weekend, which would probably be his biggest fear. I mean, he's kind of a defensive guy by nature, and forgetting formations, the defensive approach for David Moyes would be to make sure that the weekend does not go badly. I don't think it really matters from our standpoint. He's going to have to put eggs in both baskets, and we got to show up and play our football, and if we do, we'll do fine, and we'll win that game. So it's more about our psychology than theirs, I think. I think the only benefit of not having got all the points at Liverpool is our heads won't be going to all sorts of places. We won't be hearing all the noise from outside the club that the title is already ours. And West Ham becomes what I believe you Americans refer to as a trap game.
It's not a trap game.
Nobody can explain to me what a trap game is.
To be a trap game, my deal on the trap game is, for it to be a trap game, the next game coming up has to be the one you have your eye on. And Southampton at home wouldn't be the kind where we'd take our eye off West Ham away. So I'm not allowing it to have trap game status. Trap game, for example, would be what City's got, right? If the Bayern tie was live, because you'd say, Leicester at home, and no big deal. We've got Bayern next. We got to stay focused on that. That's a trap. In fact, we're the trap game for West Ham, because they got one eye on Ghent, except we're not. You know what? It's all getting very convoluted here.
You do not have the oratorical powers or the intellect to explain to me a trap game, Elliot, but I admire you having another go at it.
It's obvious. The results speak for themselves. Yeah, I clearly don't. Although... thank you. Look, we don't need to go much longer on this, Tim. Just some final thoughts. Is there a matchup you think we can exploit an aspect to this game this weekend? I mean, are you concerned at all about the psychology of who goes first, who goes second? I mean, I'm less concerned about that, only because if I was an Arsenal player, I'd be like, City Leicester, that's a 3-point banker, right? Yeah, I mean, like it's. I wouldn't be expecting it any different if they went second, but. Any matchups we can exploit that you think we should keep an eye on specifically?
I mean, kind of. Lucas Paquetá's had quite a difficult season, but I do think in a game like this, where Arsenal do tend to empty the midfield, that could be something to keep an eye on. Potentially,
wasn't there a problem for us in the reverse fixture? I feel like something happened in that fixture. He was all wound up or something.
And of course, also they got their goal in the first game by kind of lofting the ball up towards our left back area, and we had a long discussion about it at the time. But Gabriel got his timing slightly wrong, and they were able to get the flick on and believe won a penalty. And we kind of had that long discussion about, is that just because this is the first game after the World Cup? And that's it. Saliba and Gabriel kind of both got their timing a little bit wrong. And West Ham, they aimed for that left back area and they aimed for the flick on. And but this is the thing as well. It depends on who plays up front for them, because Mikel Antonio might well play up front. But they might want him, and he's 33. They might want him for the Ghent games, but then it's going to be Danny Ings, most likely. So yeah, I think how they try and hit our left back area, that's certainly what they tried to do last time. So I don't imagine we'll see much different this time. So we're going to have to be quite clean there, and that might mean that Holding has to shuffle across and all of that. So I think we've got to be a little bit mindful of that. But really, I don't think we should worry too much about their players. I think, particularly at this point of the season, I think most top teams tell you that all the focus is on how you play. If we do what we're good at, they won't have the ball anyway. We'll win the headers. Let's just concentrate on what we're doing. And look, it's what we did at Anfield, right? We went out and played. And obviously we had little plans for Mo Salah and stuff like that. But really, we were at our best in the game when we just went out and played. And so I think that Arsenal are probably at that stage now where Mikel Arteta can just say, look out for this detail, look out for that detail. But if you go and play your game, you'll win. So go and play your game.
The reverse fixture, interesting, was the first one following the World Cup.
Yeah.
If you remember, we had no Gabriel Jesus, of course. We started with Kieran Tierney, although Zinchenko came in. We did have Saliba. The rest was sort of our recognized starting 11. They didn't have to face Trossard at any point. They didn't have to face Gabriel Jesus, as I mentioned. Totally different kettle of fish, I would say.
And of course, Eddie's back for this game. We didn't discuss that in the forward rotation.
He's back in full training, isn't he?
Obviously, he's not going to start, but it's another option off the bench if we need it in that attack.
Well, and I think it also gives us an option. I mean, if we did get to a point where we had a lead that we felt was, good, you can give Eddie some minutes, get him back in the field of game and see what he's got about him. I would be surprised if he appears in this game, only because Trossard would be the first sub, assuming he doesn't start, probably for Jesus. But maybe if we are in a good position, Trossard can give Saka or Martinelli a spell, and Nketiah can spell Jesus. So we'll just see.
I think they'd be keen to get some minutes for Smith Rowe.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. We're starting to feel like we have some options. The interesting thing is, you just need to get some minutes into these legs so you can see what they can give you. That's another encouraging thing I would say, too, is if we need to push and really push for, to score, when you have Smith Rowe and Nketiah and Trossard on the bench, it starts to feel like you can really hurt them. And I'm excited to see what we are able to come up with this weekend, because having rewatched Liverpool, I think we're really good. I mean, every time I rewatch us, even if the game left me feeling a little cold in the moment, or not, no one felt cold at the end of the Liverpool game, but worried, I rewatch and I go, wow, no, you know what? We are really good. So I'm also curious to see what happens with William Saliba. We don't really have any update there, but they still, they haven't just completely ruled him out. So we'll see if maybe there's a return on the cards for him at some point. Okay, let's leave it there. We got the whole Lee Dixon section that everybody listened to, and who knows if anyone's stuck around for this. If you have, our fundraiser's almost at £200,000, people. You are, you're doing work, as they say. And we've got a wealthy individual who will remain anonymous, who has offered to donate $20,000 to match the next $20,000 we raise. So if you've been thinking of giving now, you're giving double. And the good karma is something we could all use. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Paul's on Twitter. Pause my pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Tim's on Twitter. Stillmanator. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
We'll see some of you in New York. We'll see some of you in Chicago. We'll see some of you in the third location, which is London. And that event will be announced shortly. And we will just hopefully see you, digitally as well. And we love you so much for being here, wherever you are, whether you're up on Patreon. And that money that you've sent over to us has gone to a really good place this month. So if you ever thought about signing up, you're supporting the fundraiser there. And if not, we're just happy you're here. Anyway, we love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, West Ham 0.